Hey everyone. So this video wasn't planned. I was gonna do it at a later date, but circumstances really made me want to do this now. If you just want to get to the analysis part of the video, there's a timestamp in the description. But first, I feel like I have to say some words about David's passing. When the news broke last Thursday that David Lynch had died, I cried for like 3 hours, and to some, that may be considered kind of an extreme reaction considering he was someone that I've never met. But the truth is, without David Lynch, I wouldn't be where I am in life right now. I'm a film student, a writer, I'm making short films and planning on working in film in the future, and all that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this man. He was my hero, my icon, and he saved my life. I think for the past 5 years or something, there hasn't been one day, or at least not 1 week, where I didn't think about David at least once. My first exposure to Mr. Lynch was in 2019 or 2020, when I first saw Mulholland Drive, and it instantly changed my perception on what film is and what art is and what it can be. The first time I saw it, I was so perplexed. I didn't even know if I liked it, but I started to think about this film genuinely every day, and then I rewatched it twice on the next weekend, and I was never a person who rewatches films often because there are so many, but with Mulholland Drive especially, you get something new out of it every time. Not even a week before David passed, I finally got to see it in the cinema for the first time, and even then I got even more out of it, and I do genuinely believe that it is the greatest movie ever made. And David is the greatest artist of all time. And that only with 10 films to his name, 5 of which I think are genuine 10 out of 10 masterpieces of cinema, as well as, of course, the most influential television show probably ever in Twin Peaks, which I have also watched 3 times, I think. All of these are some of the biggest achievements in filmmaking and directing, and especially neo-formalist storytelling ever. Just look at everything that's being made nowadays. Everything is inspired by David Lynch. And even apart from inspiring me creatively, he also just inspired me as a person even more than my very own family ever did, to be honest. The way he conducted himself, the way he spoke, the way he just released and brought joy into the world for so many people, the love that he radiated, the confidence that he had in making whatever the fuck he wanted. Whether it be a film no one would finance, or music, or painting, or statues, or fucking weather reports on his YouTube channel. But I'm starting to ramble at this point. We didn't deserve David Lynch. He was one of the most positive people in the world ever. And even though I've never met him, he was probably the person who had the biggest impact of my life. Call it a parasocial relationship, I don't fucking care, but I wouldn't be the person I am today without David Lynch. So let's remember him for all the joy he brought to the world. Rest in peace to the greatest artist and one of the finest human beings ever. And now, without any further preamble, on with the video. I love you, David. This video was many years in the making, and one that I am very proud to finally be able to make. It's just so horrible that it has to be in a circumstance like this. If the audio is not up to snuff, that is because I am not in my little home studio right now. I am visiting my parents at the moment, and I have to get this done pretty quickly because I'm not gonna be in said studio for a bit. So I'm just have to do it on my little phone, which I hope sounds okay. I've marked different chapters for you to look up on what sounds interesting to you, since this is once again going to be ungodly long. I hope you enjoy. So this is probably not going to be the only video I'm going to make about Mulholland Drive, but this one specifically will focus on the 10 clues that the studio forced David Lynch to include with the DVD release. And these are, I think, are really nice to like get a grip on what the movie is trying to do if you don't really get it the first time, or you need many watches. I mean, you even need many watches to kind of piece these clues together as is. But we can decipher so much about the movie through these clues. I think they are really cool. I think David did a good job with them, even if he didn't really want to have them in. But I think he since also said that he enjoyed making the clues and that he liked that people talked about them. So this is exactly what we're gonna do now. Number 1. Pay particular attention to the beginning of the film. 2 clues are revealed before the opening credits. There are 2 scenes before the opening credits. One of the jitterbug dance sequence with Diane emerging and an old couple behind her, and the other of a person going to sleep in a POV shot. This tells us 2 important things. First of all, that before the happenings of the movie, our main character was talented enough to win a jitterbug contest, and that after the person goes to sleep, most of what follows is going to be a dream. Number 2. Notice appearances of the red lampshade. The red lampshade appears 3 times. Once early on, where the Hollywood executives have their telephone chain about how the girl is still missing, which, when you watch it the first time, might be a reference to the Hollywood executives looking for Rita after the hit on her failed, but is actually about the casting for Adam's movie. Shortly after that, they find the dream version of Camilla Rhodes. The phone sequence, which ends in an unanswered call on a night table beneath the red lampshade, followed by Betty arriving at the airport. This could be a reference to various things. My interpretation is that since we see the lampshade a 3rd time near the end when Camilla calls Diane to attend Adam Casher's party, it is the same lampshade, meaning the final call in the first sequence was for Diane. The reason for why the phone chain ended at her place is either because of the guilt that is following her after she put out the hit on Camilla, or because she imagines Hollywood clamoring for her now that Camilla is gone, but it is already too late. Then there is the 2nd time the lampshade appears, which is when the hitman is smoking a cigarette with the prostitute. It can be seen in a window in the background. This is the most obvious meaning to entangle, as the red lampshade usually refers to prostitution itself. Interestingly, the prostitute looks like a more disheveled doppelganger of Diane. There are many of those in the movie. She sees Hollywood as a glorified prostitution ring where you can sleep with big ups to get ahead in the business. Number 3. Can you hear the title of the film that Adam Casher is auditioning actresses for? Is it mentioned again? The film is titled The Sylvia North Story, and is once again mentioned at the dinner party when Diane talks about how she and Camilla met. But when she mentions the movie this time, the director was not Adam, but Bob Brooker. Camilla got the lead role in Brooker's picture, and Diane was cast in a minor supporting role after Camilla convinced Brooker and later Casher for a different movie to cast her due to their affair. The reason why Diane wasn't cast in the Sylvia North Story was not because of a lack of talent, as proven by her winning the Jitterbug contest as well as obviously the audition itself, but because Camilla slept with Adam Casher to get the part in Brooker's movie. This betrayal led to Diane combining the Sylvia North Story with Adam Casher in The Dream. Furthermore, as a little real-life parallel, in 1965, a real film was released titled Sylvia, which featured a main character called Sylvia West. The Sylvia North Story could very well be a reference to Sylvia, as the soundtrack used for Casher's movie, 16 Reasons I've Told Every Little Star, was released around that time. In her mind, Diane is the Sylvia that came from the north, since she is from Canada. The following might be a long shot and a bit conspiracy-y, but nonetheless I think it's really interesting. The name Sylvia literally means woman of the trees, and the movie goes to great lengths to compare Diane/Betty with trees. Betty's last name is Elms, and the lamp under the red lampshade is tree-shaped. Another Lynch protagonist who has the name of a tree in her last name is of course Laura Palmer. Cheryl Lee actually has a cameo in Mulholland Drive as an extra in the back of Club Silencio. The actual movie Sylvia is about a 14-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather and then became a prostitute. This could indicate that Diane has also been plagued by sexual assault throughout her life, and there is also numerous imagery supporting this reading. The Beatrice Sensi painting in Aunt Ruth's apartment, a woman who was abused by her father and then hired hitman to kill him and make it look like an accident. The bruises on the prostitute's arm. When Camilla says to Diane that they should stop sleeping together, Diane starts to get physical and hurt Camilla. The audition scene in which Dad's best friend takes advances on the daughter. Notably in Twin Peaks, Laura Palmer refers to Bob as Dad's best friend as well. I'm continually going on about Twin Peaks because originally Mulholland Drive was supposed to be an ABC television show, which was a spin-off of Twin Peaks following Cheryl Lee's character, but that never materialized. Number 4. An accident is a terrible event. Notice the location of the accident. Easiest of the bunch, Rita's accident happens on Mulholland Drive, below an underpass leading to Adam Casher's house. The same place where Camilla later collects Diane and subsequently breaks her heart, which leads to Diane calling a hitman to kill Camilla. Terrible events all around. In the dream world, the hitman is incompetent, struggling to even pull off the easiest hit in the world with a silenced pistol in a one-man office, which results in 3 people dead and a fire alarm going off, which could also be considered an accident. The reason the hitman is so incompetent in the dream is because Diane secretly wishes for the hit on Camilla to fail. Later on in the dream, when everything seems to be fine and Betty and Rita hang out at home, a mysterious hooded woman named Louise Bonner is at the door and senses that Rita is in danger. Notice the wording that she uses in this scene. "That one is in my room and she won't leave. I want you to get her out. I want you to get her out now." Talking about the very childlike Rita. And then later, Coco says to Betty, "If there is trouble in there, get rid of it." The way all of this was worded is suspiciously similar to a mother talking her guilt-ridden daughter into getting an abortion after an accidental pregnancy. There is surprisingly also a lot of abortion imagery in the movie. The cowboy saying that, "If you see me once, you did good. If you see me twice, you did bad," as if he was a pregnancy test, and the man behind Winkies discarding the blue box in a paper bag, which also features a piece of raw meat and a used pop top. This is another long shot, and of course if you're looking for patterns, you will find them, and I'm not getting too much out of that. I don't know if that is a reading that is actually fair, but I find it too fascinating not to mention. Number 5. Who gives the key and why? A continuation of number 4. Diane receives the real key as a confirmation of the hit on Camilla being successful. Then there is a second metaphysical key, which is found by Rita in her purse. However, neither of those keys are necessarily given to anybody. The only key that is shown being given from one person to another is when Coco gives Betty the key to Aunt Ruth's rental home. After Betty explodes the apartment, she says she is in a dream place. Therefore, the key to Aunt Ruth's apartment opens the dream world, a key to a untruth. The triangle key opens the blue box, after which we get sucked inside it alongside Betty and Rita. Diane then wakes up in her apartment, which has blue walls in the living room. If the key to Aunt Ruth's apartment was the opening of the dream world, the blue key is the opening of the real world. Number 6. Notice the robe, the ashtray, the coffee cup. This is a tricky one, as yes, they are relatively easy to spot. The robe is worn by Diane after she wakes up. The piano-shaped ashtray is on Diane's living room table, and coffee cups can be seen throughout the movie in various locations. But its most prominent appearance is also after Diane wakes up, where she makes a coffee and sees a vision of Camilla. She then makes out with her and the coffee cup turns into a glass of whiskey. But what does it mean? Good question. My guess is that it is a sort of continuity clue for where we are in the chronological order of events. For example, when Diane makes the coffee in the robe and it turns into a glass of whiskey with her no longer wearing the robe, it suggests 2 different moments in time. The real time is when Diane has the coffee. The whiskey is a flashback. And the ashtray is the perfect device for this, as it is picked up by Diane's neighbor after she wakes up, so when we see it on the table later on it suggests an earlier moment while it was still there. Interestingly, there is also an ashtray on the night table beneath the red lampshade filled with filtered cigarettes. And notably, Camilla only smokes unfiltered cigarettes, whereas Diane doesn't smoke at all, at least as far as we know. After all, she borrowed her neighbor's ashtray, but that might have just been as a favor to Camilla, as she didn't own one before, so I still think Diane is not a smoker. The only person who can be seen smoking a filtered cigarette is the hitman. This ties him back to the red lampshade and the one-off scene where he gives the blonde prostitute a cigarette. He's also a pimp. The question is if the call during the red lampshade scene with the cigarettes is meant for Diane. It could indicate that after she was not able to find footing in Hollywood, she had to make ends meet as a prostitute, signaling the abuse and pressure that the Hollywood system puts on young actresses. Admittedly, another kind of long shot, but it makes sense to me. Diane is also drinking a coffee at the dinner party when Camilla kisses the fake dream Camilla and then comes back in the dream during the executives meeting where the Castigliani brothers want Adam to cast Camilla. And when Angelo drinks his espresso and then spits it out, it tastes bitter. Diane's mug also displays SOS. There's also another prominent robe when Betty first comes to Hollywood, a red one which she uses to cover Rita after she got out of the shower. It's a robe meant for Betty, but it is worn by Rita, a metaphor for Camilla taking the success that was promised for Diane. What is felt, realized and gathered at Club Silencio. Rita and Betty feel a profound sadness during Rebecca Del Rio's performance of Gerando. Betty starts to shake after the magician conducts thunder and lightning. It is then realized by us, the audience, that everything up to that point, and, well, filmmaking in general, is only an illusion. Diane created everything that we have seen so far, minus the things in clue number 1, in her head while she was dreaming. Before we enter the club, Rita, almost in a trance-like state, wakes up Betty with her constant repetition of Silencio. In this shot, Lynch has their faces overlap as a callback to Ingmar Bergman's Persona, also a film about two women realizing who they are, and also a film about cinematic illusion. What is gathered is the mysterious blue box that Betty finds in her purse. Who put it there? It doesn't really matter, but it is the signal for Diane to wake up. It is the plot device that signals the dreamer to wake up, since you always wake up as soon as something illogical happens that makes you realize that you are dreaming. Number 8. Did talent alone help Camilla? Obviously, the answer here is no. Real Camilla seduced Adam Casher to get ahead, and Dream Camilla got the audition part after Adam's hands were tied by the cowboy. This dream part of Mulholland Drive actively goes out of its way to include and set up as many genre tropes of classic Hollywood as possible. The gangster movie, the western, the erotic thriller, the rom-com, the crime thriller, and pulls it to absolutely absurd and artificial lengths as both in-universe as a way for Diane to process everything that happens in reality, and imagines a world in which Hollywood cliches are real as a way to cope with her supposed failure. Every weird genre setup also has a payoff in reality. In the dream, the version of Camilla that the executives want is also the girl that the real Camilla is kissing at the dinner party, so the dream audition is now also about why Camilla chose this blonde girl instead of her. Number 9. Note the occurrences surrounding the man behind Winkies. Another tricky one on so many levels. We see this man 3 times. First, in the beginning with the 2 guys talking about dreams, Dan says how he never wants to see this face outside of a dream again. Then they go investigate and Dan begrudgingly obliges, suggesting this too is inside of a dream. In this chronology, Dan canonically has a heart attack and dies. Does death equal waking up in this case? Nevertheless, it is interesting that the one having this dream is Rita, as she ostentatiously falls asleep right before the Winkies scene. At least Rita dreams of him within Diane's dream. So it's really more Diane that's dreaming of Dan, and it is also easier to understand if you think of Dan as another self-insert for the innocent side of Diane. After all, Dan, Diane. The scene then becomes about Diane being scared about ordering the hit and then seeing Dan looking at her, wondering if he knows what's up. The second time we see the man is towards the end, presumably still behind Winkies, bathed in red light. He plays with the blue box and puts it into a paper bag, which later spawns the old couple to return. The third time we see him is right at the end after Diane commits suicide, and her life flashes before her eyes. The man's face is superimposed upon blue light and later fades into Betty's face. Also, the man is played by a woman. Number 10. Where is Aunt Ruth? Great question. She can be seen in the beginning when she leaves to work on a movie in Canada. This is when Rita is sneaking into her home and falls asleep below her kitchen counter, which leads into the first Winky's nightmare. Her presence is not gone, however, as she calls both Coco and Betty at one point in the movie, but we never hear her talk, and after Betty and Rita are absorbed into the blue box, Aunt Ruth reappears in her home. What makes this all the more complicated is that at the dinner party, Diane mentions that Aunt Ruth died way before she ever came to Hollywood and left her an inheritance, presumably the apartment. There was also an old joke in old Hollywood where acting in Canada meant that the person is dead. This also explains why Betty and Ruth don't meet each other at the airport since they arrived and left on the same day. I think this clue exists because otherwise you wouldn't be thinking much of Aunt Ruth at all, at least I didn't until I saw she was part of the clues. Through these clues, although they don't tell us a whole lot, we are able to put together the chronological story of the happenings surrounding what happens behind the plot. Diane wins a jitterbug contest and is invited to Hollywood by the two judges, the old couple. Diane and Camilla meet at an audition and begin sleeping together. Diane develops feelings for her, Camilla doesn't. Camilla uses her sex appeal to get better parts than Diane, who is reduced to extra roles. After Diane finds out about Camilla's affairs, she shuts her out of her life and falls into a deep depression. Camilla invites Diane to a dinner party at which Camilla announces her engagement to Adam Casher. Diane is now so mad that she hires a hitman to kill Camilla. Her and the hitman meet at Winky's and Dan looks her straight in the eye and becomes disturbed. She goes to sleep and dreams up the first 2/3 of the movie. Here, she lives in a dream world in which she can fulfill her fantasies. Diane becomes Betty and Camilla becomes Rita. Rita is now bound to Betty after the hit on her is foiled by incompetent hitmen. Rita needs Betty to survive, a reversal of how Diane needed Camilla to survive in Hollywood. Betty is a great actress and Adam Casher wants her. Adam is repeatedly bullied by the studio and even his own fake wife as a sort of schadenfreude wish fulfillment for Diane. Rita puts on a blonde wig to suggest she is also just a creation of Diane. After Betty puts all the pieces together and realizes she is not real, she and Rita disappear and Diane wakes up. She sees the blue key on her table. The hitman killed Camilla the night that Diane had the dream. Now she becomes paranoid and envisions the two judges tormenting her, shocked to see what she has become, before she then commits suicide. The homeless man behind Winky's in this scenario is Diane herself, the person that she sees herself as after everything that happened, a version of herself she never wanted to see.
Thank you.
My pleasure.